Where will you go? Shabbat Shalom. We are going to begin our tefillah this morning on page 65. Marsha Hurwitz will lead us through the preliminary portions of our service as we pray and address God. Page 65, we ask you to please rise.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan l'sechli v'nachalev ben yom u'ben layla. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani b'tzamohu. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani bat chorim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam bokech ivrihim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam bisharumihim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam atir asurihim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam sokef kefufihim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam rokaretz al hamayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asa likol tzorkihim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam amachim mitzadek aver. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam ozer Yisrael b'gvuracha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam oter Yisrael b'tifaracha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam anoten le'ev koach. Baruch atah. Utenenu Yehovah b'chol yom v'chenu chesed u'rachamim v'necha ro'enu v'tigmalenu chasadim tovim Baruch atah Adonai gomel chasadim tovim le'amo Yisrael.
You may be seated.
Ashreinu ma tov chelkeinu, ma na'im voraleinu, ma yafa rushatenu. Ashreinu she'anachnu mashkivim, u'marivim erev havoker, ve'omrim pa'amayim b'chol yom. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai echad. Page 67. Kadesh Shema Makdish Shemacha Vekadesh Shema Be'olamecha V'Yeshuatecha Tarim Tapia Karnenu Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh Shema Berabim. Page 72. Hayom Yom Shabbat Kodesh Shebo hayu avim omrim b'beit hamikdash Mizmor shir hayom HaShabbat. Od yeravim b'sevach Shani v'rananim yiyu Lehagi ki asher Adonai Suri v'elav latapuhu. Page 81.
81.
Mizmor shir Chanukah Habayit LeDavid. הפקת מספדי למחולי, פיתקת שקים עד יעזרני שמחך, למען יזמרך, כבוד ולא ידום אדוני אלוהי לעולם עודך. Page 82, Warner's Kaddish. Yitgadal,
Shemei Rabbah. V'yoma divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei. V'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael. Ba'agala uvizman kariv imru amen. Yehi
Shmei Rabban Le'orah Le'olam
Le'olam Yitbarak v'yittabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shmei d'kudusha brichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran b'yalma v'yimru amen. Yehi shlama raba min shemaya. V'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom Ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru
Amen. Page 83, please rise.
Rise.
Maharoshem Arvahayaholacha Maharucho Severeshit
Omer Yosef,
Maharucho Zerum Kayecha
Baruch Rachem Haaretz,
Maharuk Merachem Abriocho
Baruch Shalem Satar
Yorecha
Tov
Maharuch Haleah V'Kayom Lanetzach Baruch Odeo Matzil Baruch Shemohu. Yachid Haolamim Melech Meshubah Ufar Adead Shemo Gadol Baruch Atah Adonai Melech Mechulav Tishbahu. Page 96, please be seated. Ahashrei Ushvei Betecha Od Yalucha Selah. Tehillat Adonai Adonai Fihi Vivorech Ol Basar Shem Koshol Elon Vaed Me'anachnu Nevorech Yachad Me'ata Ve'ad Olam Hallelujah. Page 100, Psalm 150. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah, hallelujah,
Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah, Bekira Uzo. Hallelujah, 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 Vivurata, hallelujah, hallelujah, Karo'ulo, hallelujah, 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 B'techa shofar, hallelujah, hallelujah, b'lev al-bechinor, hallelujah, 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 b'tov u'machor, hallelujah, hallelujah, b'minim v'elgav, hallelujah, 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 b'tzilzalei shamat, hallelujah, hallelujah, b'tzilzalei truah. Kol hanshama tehaleya, kol hanshama tehaleya, kol hanshama tehaleya, hallelujah, kol hanshama tehaleya, hallelujah. Page 102, please rise. Yahar Yisrael V'Yahar Gedul Lacha אשר עשה אדוני במצרים, ויקרא את אדוני בימין ובאדוני ובמושבתו. אז ישיר משה ובני ישראל את השיר הזאת לאדוני, ויאמרו לאמור, השיר אדוני כי קהו סוס ורובו רמה בים. עוזי וזמרת ים ויכלי לישועה, זה לי ויענווהו אלוהי אביב אברהם. אדוני איש מלחמה, אדוני שמו, מרכבות ברוב, ולכלו ירח בים, ומבחר שלישיו טובעו בים סוף, תהומות יחזיומו, ירדו וימסולו כמו אבן.
אחרי כשלתי מלמד שיעריך על ביתו שמיידית נשב לכנסם מיוסד. קודשך שמו עמים ירגזון חיל לחצי ישבי פלה אשר אז נבלו על לפי אדום אלי מואב ויוחזם אורן לעמוד חוי. נמשיך אותנו למקדש אדוני כוננו ידך.
אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. כי לאדוני מלוכך ומושל בגויים, ועלו מושיע בהר ציון לשפוט את הרס"ב. והייתה לאדוני מלוכך, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ויאמר הוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד. Page 104.
You may be seated.
מה כל חי, תברך את שם אדוני אלוהינו.
וברוך הבא תפארם את
נחללך ונשבחך ונפארך וברך את שם קודשך כאמור לדוד. ברכי נפשי את אדוני וכל קרבי את שם קודשו. האהב את עצמות וזהב גדול בעקבות שמך הגיבור לנצח הנורא בנורותיך, המלך היושב על כיסא רם ונישא.
Yishar Kokachech. Thank you for leading us through the preliminary portions of our service. We are now on page 105 in the middle of the page. Shochinar marom kadosh shemo בפי ישרים תתהלל ובדברי צדיקים תתברך ובלשון חסידים תתרומם ובקרב קדושים תתקדש ובמחלו רבבות עמך בית ישראל תורינה היפה שמך מכן מקודו ולא שכחנו ותנו לו להלל שבתנו להודות, להלל, לשבח, לפאר, לרומם, להדר, לברך, להלל ולקלס Achod ivre shirot betishbechor David ben Yishai avdecha mishichecha. Please rise. Yishtabach shimecha l'admakenu Aurelia melech ha'kedol v'akadosh v'mekenu v'levotenu Shir u'shfacha halech zima'ot u'memshalat Birachot ve'hodaot me'ata v'yad olam Baruch atah Adonai el melech gadol v'tishbachor el ha'hodaot Adonai niflaot habocher b'shirei zimera melech el che'olamim Yikadash merabah Bi'amad yivrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei B'chayechon v'yomechon U'chayedecha ben Yisrael Bagala bagala U'vizman kariv yimeru Yehishmera Mivarach Le'alam olam yomaya Yitbarak Yitbarak Yishtabak Yitbarak Romam Yitnaseh Yitadar Yitalev Yitala Shemer Kudusha Brichu Li'ela Min Ko Birchata V'shirata Tut Bechata V'nechemata Damiran B'yama V'yimero Baruchu et Adonai HaMevorach Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Moed. You may be seated. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam yisrael v'rei choshech oseh shalom v'rei et hakol. Middle of 107. En kirkecha Adonai Eloheinu ba'olam hazeh v'inzulatecha makenu l'chayei olam haba efes b'yotecha go'aleinu limor HaMashiach v'yendo melecha Moshienu l'tchiyat ha'metim. 108. El Adon HaKol HaMasim Baruch u'mbarak befikon neshama Godlo v'tuvo malei olam Da'at Aduna sovevim oto Hamigawe achayot HaKodesh V'nedar b'chavod al HaMerkava Zechut u'mishor lifnei chiso Chesed v'rachamim lifnei chivodo Tovim miorot shebara Eloheinu Yitzaram b'dat v'bina uv'haskel Koach odvoran natan bahem Liot moshrim b'kerev tevel Melein ziv u'mfikim noga Noezivim b'chol ha'olam Simechim b'tzetam v'sasim b'voam Osim b'yem ha'ritzon konam Pe'er v'chavod notnim lishmor Tzohala v'rina lezecher malchuto Kal al ha'shemesh v'yizrachor Rav v'yikim tzurat halavana Shevach notnim lo Kol tzeva marom Tiferet u'gedula Serafim v'yokba וחיות הקודש, ליל אשר שבת מכל המעשים ביום השביעי. לפיכך יפרעו בנו. Kedusha Liotzer, page 110. Tzipar Turin Malkin Goalin Abore Kedoshim. Yishabashim Halam Makin Yotzer Mishartim Bashem Mishartav Kulamon. Kulam Ahuvim, Kulam Berurim, Kulam Giborim, Vekulam Osim, B'Yemav Yira, Ritzon Konam, Vekulam Porchim et Bihem, Begerusha v'Tohara, V'Shira u'Zimra, U'Mevarchim, U'Meshabachim Farim, Maritzim U'Makdishim, U'Mamlichim, Et Shema El HaMelech, HaGadol HaGibor VeHaNorah, Kadosh Hu. וכולם מקבלים עליהם מלאכות שמיים זה מזה ונותנים רשות זה לזה להקדיש ליוצרם בנחת רוח בשפה ורע ונעימה קדושה כולם כאחד עונים ואומרים ביראה קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוך על הארץ כבודו. והאופנים וחיות הקודש ברעש גדול מנשאים ליום הצרפים ליום משבחים ואומרים ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו להברך ממגיתנו. אור חדש על ציון תאיר, אור חדש על ציון תאיר, ונזכה כולנו מהרה ליאורו, מהרה ליאורו. ברוך אתה אדוני יוצר המאורות. Having identified God as the God of creation, we turn to page 111, continuing reflecting God's sense of revelation and the giving of Torah as a gift of love. וקרבתנו לשמך גדול סלע באמת, להודות לך יחרך ביאהבה, ברוך אתה אדוני, הבוחר בעמו ישראל ביאהבה. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבבך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם, ושבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. We read silently through the bottom of page 112. בהיים שמוע תשמע את השעה. ושכנתם בחרף עננה בכם ויצר שמי וליים את האדם עליו. ולמדתם אותם מפניכם לדבר משמעית. יבוא ימיכם וימי בניכם על אדמה שנשבע אדוני אליו ותקם לתהילה מהשמיים. ויאמר אדוני אל משה לאמור דבר אל בני ישראל ואמרת עליהם ויעשו להם ציצית על כנפי בגדיהם לדורותם ונתנו על ציצית הכנף בטיל תכלת והיה לכם לציצית וראיתם אותו וזכרתם את כל מצוות אדוני ועשיתם אותם ולא תטורו אחרי לבבכם ואחרי עיניכם אשר אתם זונים אחריהם למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם אמת אדוני אלוהיכם אמת לדור ודור הוא קיים ושמו קיים וכיסו נכון ומלכותו ואמונתו לעד קיימת. נמלט ותן ביעלנו ביעלנו ביעל בדורתנו ביעל דרכו דור ישראל עבדיך מלכנו מלך אבותינו גואלנו גואל אבותינו יוצרנו צור ישועתנו פודנו מצילנו מעולם שמך אין אלוהים זולתך עזרת אבותינו אתה הוא מעולם מגן משה אלוהינו מטוב ודור ברום העולם אשריך משפטך וצדקתך ערפי ארץ תהילה לעליון ברוך ומבורך משה ובני ישראל לכנו שירה בשמחה רבה ויאמרו כולם מי כמוך באלים אדוני מי כמוך נדר בקודש נורא תהילות אוסף אלה שירה חדשה שיבחו גאולים לשמך שפת הים יחד כולם הודו והמליכו ויאמרו אדוני ילך לעולם ועד צור ישראל קומה בעזרת ישראל ופדחנו מכאן יהודה וישראל גואלנו אדוני צבאות שמו קדוש ישראל ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל. An opportunity for silent prayer, the Amidah, can be found page 115 through page 120. We invite you to finish your private prayers. As a community, we turn back to page 115b for the repetition of the Amidah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avoteinu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor V'Hanora El Elyon Gomer Chassadim Tovim V'Konei Hakol V'Zocher Chasdei Avod U'Mevi Goel Livnei B'neihem Leman Shemo B'Yahava Melech Ozer U'Poked U'Moshia U'Magen Baruch atah Adonai Magen Avraham U'Poked Sarah Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai Mechayeh Metim Atah Rab Lehoshia Mashiva Ruach U'Morida Gashem Mechalkel Chayim Bechesed Mechayeh Metim Berachamim Rabim Somech Noflim V'Rofei Cholim U'Matir Asurim U'Mekayem Emunato Lishenei Afar Michamocha B'Gevurot U'Mido Melach Melech Memid U'Mechayeh U'Matzmiach Yeshua V'Nemanata L'Chayot Metim Baruch atah Adonai Mechayeh Ametim. Nikadesh et Shimcha ba'olam Keshem shemakdishim oto b'shmei marom Kakatuv al yad neviecha Yikara zeh el zeh v'yamar Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh Adonai Tzevaot Meloch ha'aretz kivodo. Oz b'kol rash gadol Adir v'chazak mashmi kol Mitnaseim le'umat serafim le'umatam Baruch Yomeiro Baruch Kivod Adonai mimekomo. ממקומך מכנו תופיע ותמלוך עלינו כי מחכים אנחנו לך מתי תמלוך בציון בקרוב בימינו לעולם ועד תשכון תיגדע ותתקדש בתוך ירושלים עירך לדור ודור ולנצח נצחים בעינינו תארנה מלכותך שירי עוזך על ידי דוד משיח צדקך ימלוך אדוני לעולם אלוהי ציון לדור ודור הללויה לדור ודור נגיגות לך ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד כי אל מלך גדול וקדוש אתה ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. You may be seated. We continue 117. ישמח משה במתנת חלקו כי עבד נאמן קראת לו כליל תפארת בראשו נתת בעומדו בפניך על הר סיני ושני לוחות אבנים הוריד בידו וכתוב בהם שמירת שבת וכתוב בהם שמירת שבת וכן כתוב בתורתך ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם כי 6 ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ וביום השביעי שבת וינפש. ולא נתתו אדוני אלוהינו לגויי הארצות ולא הנחלת מלכי לעבדי פסילים וגם במנוחתו לא ישכנו רשעים כי לישראל עמך נתתו באהבה לזרע יעקב אשר בם בחרת מקדשי שביעי כולם יספו ויתענגו מטובך והשביעי רצית בו וקידשתו חמדת ימים אותו קראת זכר למעשה בראשית אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו רצה במנוחתנו קדשנו במצוותיך ותן חלקנו בתורתך צוונו מטובך ושמחנו בישועתך ותאר ליבנו מעובדך באמת והנחילנו אדוני אלוהינו באהבה וברצון שבת קודשך ינוחו וישראל מקדש שמך ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת. רצה אדוני אלוהינו בעמך ישראל ובתפילתם והשבת עבדה לביא ביתך ותפילתם באהבה תקבל ברצון ותהי לרצון תמיד עבודת ישראל עמך ותחזינה עינינו בשובך לציון ברחמים ברוך אתה אדוני המחזיר שכינתו לציון מודים אנחנו. כי אלוהיך לא רחמך והמרה כן כי לא תמו חסדיך מעולם קיווינו לך ועל כולם יתברך ויתרומם שמך מלכנו תמיד לעולם ועד וכל החיים יודוך סלה ויהללו את שמך באמת או ישועתנו ועזרתנו סלה ברוך אתה אדוני הטוב שמך ולך נאה להודות אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו Baruchenu b'arakam shuleshet b'torah k'tuva al yedei Moshe avdecha ha'amura mipi Aaron uvanav kohanim amkiroshecha ka'amor yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuanecha Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasim lecha shalom. Page 120. Sim shalom tova uvracha chen v'chesed v'rachamim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael amecha baruchenu avinu kulanu ki echad bior panecha ki bior panecha natata lanu Adonai Eloheinu sim shalom tova uvracha chen v'chesed v'rachamim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael amecha Torah chaim v'avar chesed u'tzedaka u'bracha v'rachamim v'chaim v'shalom sim shalom tova u'bracha chen v'chesed v'rachamim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael amecha v'tov b'yinecha levarech et amcha Yisrael b'chol el u'b'chol sha'a b'shlomecha sim shalom tova uvracha chen v'chesed v'rachamim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael amecha Baruch atah Adonai Amivarech Ramo Yisrael Bashalom. Turn to page 138. Yitkara v'yikara shemir rabba me'biyom adivra kirute v'yamlich malchute b'chayechonu v'mechonu b'chaydecho bet Yisrael b'agalav izman karev yimeru Yeshmir rabba mevarach me'alam olam me'omaya Yitbarak v'yishtabak v'yitpar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitalev v'yitlash shmir kodeshav v'rieko v'yela min kol birchata v'shirata tzivgata v'nekamata damiran v'yelama v'yimeru amen Titkabel tzilot honu v'uthon dechol Yisrael kodam avuhon v'shmaya v'yimeru amen Yesh lama rabba min shemai v'chayim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yimeru amen Oseh shalom bimromav u'yaseh shalom aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yimru. We now turn to the service for removing the Sefer Torah from the Aron. We invite Aurelia to come forward. As an adult, as she becomes a bat mitzvah, she takes her place in leading the congregation in prayer. Page 139.
Ein kamo hava Elohim Adonai, vein k'maaseha malhuteha malhut kol olamim u'memshalteha bechol dor v'dor. Adonai melech, Adonai Adonai Yivarech et Amo Shalom. Av harachamim hetiva v'yirtzon ha'etzion tivnei chomot Yerushalayim tivnei chomot Yerushalayim
As the ark is open in the middle of page 139. Come on up.
Vayehi bin Soah Haaron, Vayomer Moshe, Kuma Adonai, Veyafusu Oyevecha, Veyanusu Mesanecha Mipanecha, Ki Mitzion Teitzei Torah, Ki Mitzion Teitzei Torah, Udevar Adonai miYerushalayim, Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah, Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah, Le'amo Yisrael, B'kedushato. Baruch Shmei Demara. Ana Abda Shabbat. Be'anarahet, Be'anarahet, Be'lishme Kadisha, Kadisha Yakira, Ana Emar Tushbehan, Yehera Rava Kodama, Tetifta Libi Beoraita, Vitashli Mishalin Delibi, Deliba Dicholama Yisrael, Letavu Lechayin V'Ishlam. Amen. Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo.
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo.
Gadlu Adonai Yiti, Unerom Mema Shemo Yachdav.
Lecha Adonai Agedol, V'Atiferet, V'Anetzach, V'Ahor, Kicho b'Shamayim Uvaret, Kicho b'Shamayim Uvaret, Lecha Adonai Amalach, Adonai Eloheinu, v'ishtachavu, la'adam raglav kadoshu, romimo, Adonai Eloheinu, v'ishtachavu, lehar kodsho, Kadosh, Adonai Eloheinu. You may be seated. In preparing for this morning, the Torah reading, Aurelia has been studying the text and wants to share a few words with us to teach us a little bit from that text.
Shabbat Shalom. My Torah portion is called Lech Lecha and contains the commandment to circumcise boys on the 8th day. God promises that God will be there for us from generation to generation. In return, we promise God that we will circumcise the flesh of our offspring as a covenant between God and us, the Jewish people. Our people now have a binding agreement with God symbolized by the Brit Milah, or circumcision. As an everlasting covenant, Abraham's children will be marked as was our forefather. The question I have is, what does circumcision have to do with covenant with God? How did the practice of circumcision become specifically a Jewish ritual? Circumcision has become a Jewish ritual that identifies one as a Jew. Others can mark us as Jews, and we can be proud of who we are. As any other initiation, it reminds us that we are part of the Jewish community. We give the baby a name at the Brit Milah ceremony, connecting the ritual with the Jewish identity. This Jewish ritual also teaches us a valuable lesson. God grants us the gift of everything in the world. However, the world is in need of improvement and repair, and we need to partner with God in the process. The Brit Milah ceremony serves as a reminder of this responsibility. God has given us our bodies, but we have to do the fixing ourselves. This ritual serves as a sign that we, as Jews, have been contracted to God to do the work of perfecting ourselves and the world around us. As I become a bat mitzvah, I hope that I will learn this important lesson. None of us are perfect. We all need support to become our best selves. I have learned the importance of Jewish identity in my life. Even though I don't have a physical marker, I am fully Jewish and I celebrate my Jewish identity here today. I want to thank my mom and dad for helping me through the process to make me the person I am today. I couldn't have done this without you guys. I also would not be the same person without you two. Thank you to Felix and Valeria, my brother and my sister, for supporting me through my long process. I know you find it very boring, but now it's your turn. Thank you to Nana and Poppy for encouraging me through the process. I also want to thank you for driving me to and from my bat mitzvah lessons, which really helped out. I truly could not have done it without you. You have helped our whole family so much, which let me explore my Jewish community. Thank you, Grandma and Papa. Even though we might not see each other in person often, you have certainly helped me through this journey over Skype. I always love talking to you. Thank you to all my friends for coming out and supporting me today. Lastly, thank you to everybody watching over Zoom. Thank you.
Scott, beautifully done. All right, so you're going to take your stuff. You're going to come back to this seat. And we're going to continue with our Torah reading for this morning. V'yazor v'yagim v'yoshia lecha lechosim bo v'nomar amen hakol havu godel Eloheinu nukvod laTorah yamod harishon Baruch shenatan Torah li'amo Yisrael b'kedushato v'yatem adbekim b'adoneichem chayim kulchem hayom. The Torah reading begins on page 86, chapter 16 of Genesis, verse 1.
Baruch Hu et Adonai hamavarach.
Baruch Adonai hamavarach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai hamavarach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim. v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. V'savrai eshet Avraham lo yada lo v'la shivcha mitzrit u'shema Hagar. V'tomer Savrai el Avraham hinena tzarani Adonai miledet bona el shivchati ulai ibanehem mimena vayishma Avraham lekol Sarai. Vatikach Sarai eshet Avraham et Hagar hamitzrit shivchata miketz 10 shanim leshevet Avraham be'eretz Canaan matiten ota le'Avram isha lo le'isha Vayavo el Hagar, vatar, vatereki harataha, vatekal gvirtaha be'eneha, vatomer Sarai el Avraham, chamasi alecha, anochi natahati shivchati bechekecha, vetereki harataha, ve'ekaha be'neha, yishpot Adonai be'ni uve'necha. Vayomer Avraham el Sarai, hineh shivchatech biyadech, asiv lahatov b'nayech, v'te'eneha Sarai vatifrach mipaneha.
Shkoch.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Yamot Sheni. The text continues, page 87, verse 7.
Baruch Hu Adonai Hambarach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu michol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Vayimtza malach Adonai al ein hamayim bamidbar al ha'ayin b'derech shur vayomar Hagar shivcha hatzarai emizebat ve'ana telechi Vatomer mipnei Sarai gvirti ani borachat Vayomer la malach Adonai shuvi el gvirtech v'hita ani tachat yadeha.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nota b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. We stop to celebrate a special moment, offering up a Mishaberach Avotenu Avraham Yitzchak Yaakov Sarika Rachel Leah. May God, who blessed our ancestors Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless Ken and Kathy, who are here today with gratitude for all the blessings that their 31 years have afforded them. May the Kadosh Baruch Hu protect and deliver them. May they continue to enjoy God's blessings, surrounded by family, surrounded by community, so that they may always live in joy and gladness, peace and companionship, and together we say, Amen. Od yishma v'yarei Yehuda u'lechad Yerushalayim. Od yishma v'yarei Yehuda u'lechad Yerushalayim. Kol Might you have any words of advice you might offer us? 31 years talking. Good.
Keep it simple and happy.
Keep it simple and happy. We accept. Everybody got that? Simple, happy. Mazel tov.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yamot Shlishi. Verse 10.
Baruch Hu es Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Voed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Le'olam Voed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Olam. Asher b'chabonu mikol amin. V'nasan lanu es Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Nosein HaTorah.
Amen.
אמן. ויאמר לך מלאך אדוני הרבה את זרעך ולא יספר מרוב. ויאמר לך מלאך אדוני הנה הרה ויולדת בן וקראת שמו ישמעאל כי שמע אדוני אל עונייך והוא יהיה פרא אדם ידו וכל ויד כל בו ועל פני כל אחיו ישכון. ותקרא שם אדוני הדובר אליה אתה אל רועי כי אמרה הגם הלום ראיתי אחרי רועי על כן קרא לבאר באר לחי רועי הנה בן קדש ובן ברד. ותלד הגר לאברהם בן ויקרא אברהם שם בנו אשר ילדה הגר ישמעאל ואברהם בן 80 שנה ו6 שנים בלדת הגר את ישמעאל לאברהם.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher nasan lanu Torah emes v'chayei olam nata b'tzolchenu. Baruch atah Adonai nosein haTorah.
Amen. Shkoach. The fourth Aliyah can be found page 89, chapter 17, verse 1. Yamor Revi.
Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Voed.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim. V'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
אמן. ויהי אברהם בן 90 שנה ו9 שנים וירא אדוני אל אברהם ויאמר אליו אני אל שדי התהלך לפני ויהיה תמים ואתנה וריתי ביני וביניך וארבה אותך במאוד מאוד. ויפול אברהם על פניו וידבר איתו אלוהים לאמור אני הנה וריתי איתך והיית לאב המון גויים ולא יקרא עוד את שמך אברהם והיה שמך אברהם כי אב המון גויים נתתיך והפרתי אותך במאוד מאוד ונתתיך לגויים ומלכים ממך יצאו.
Shkoach.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Yamor Chamishi. The fifth Aliyah, page 90, verse 7.
Baruch Hu es Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch
Adonai Baruch Le'olam Voed.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Voed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'nasan lanu es Torato. Baruch atah Adonai nosein haTorah.
Amen. Vehakimoti et briti beini uveinecha uvein zaracha acharecha l'doratam lifrit olam liot l'cha l'Elohim l'zaracha acharecha v'natati l'cha l'zaracha acharecha et eretz megurecha et kol eretz Canaan achuzat olam vayiti lahem l'Elohim Vayomer Elohim el Avraham v'ata el briti tishmor ata zarcha charecha l'dorotam zot briti asher tishmeru beini uveinechem uvein zarcha acharecha himolachem kol zachar unotem et basar orlachem v'hayalot brit beini uveinechem Uvein shmonat yamim yimol lachem kol zachor dorotechem yilid bayat v'nat kesef mikol ben nechar asher lo mizarachahu himo yilid betcha miknat kaspecha v'hayantav riti b'sarchem v'rit olam v'reil zachar asher lo yimol et basar or lat To v'nichrata hanefesh shahim me'ameha ebriti hefar v'yomer Elohim el Avraham Sarai ishtecha lo tekra et Shema Sarai kisha Sarah Shema Uverati ota v'gam natati mimena l'cha ben v'raticha v'hayta l'goyim v'alchei yamim mimena yiyu Vayipol Avraham al panav Yitzchak Vayomer belibo Alven me'ashana yivaled v'im Sarah avati shim shana teled
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah semes v'chayei olam notah b'socheinu Baruch atah Adonai nosein haTorah.
Amen. Mishkoch. Yamot Shishi. Page 91, verse 18.
Baruch Hu Adonai Hamborach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Ra.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim
V'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Vayomer Avraham el Elohim lo Yishmael yihye lefanecha. Vayomer Elohim afas arvacha ishtecha yoledet otcha behem v'karat et shemo Yitzchak v'hakimoti briti ito livrit olam l'zarach harachav וישמעאל שמעתיך הנה ברכתי אותו והבראתי אותו והבאתי אותו במאוד מאוד 12 נשיאים יוליד ונתתי לגוי גדול ובריתי אקים את יצחק אשר תלד לך 10 למועד הזה בשנה אחרת ויכל לדבר איתו ויעל אלוהים מעל אברהם ויקח אברהם את ישמעאל בנו ואת כל ילידי ביתו ואת כל מקנה כספו כל שכר מאנשי ביתו אברהם ויעמו את בשר לתם בעצם היום הזה כאשר דיבר איתו אלוהים.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'hayei
Olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. A nice preview. Seventh Aliyah. Yando Ahorim Sima Freda Bat Moshe Yankov Miriam Velevi Zelig Ben Moshe Tevye Vitzirol Shvi.
Baruch hu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai Melech Me'olam Moed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach L'Olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
ואברהם בן 99 שנה בהימלו בשר עורלתו וישמעאל בנו בן 13 שנה בהימלו את בשר עורלתו בעצם היום הזה נימול אברהם וישמעאל בנו וכל אנשי ביתו יליד בית ומקנה כסף מאת בן נהר נימולו איתו.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'kidkenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. We offer a Mishaberach for all those who participated this morning. Mishaberach Avotenu Abraham Yitzchak Yaakov. Saruk Rachel V'Leah. Hu Yivarech et Hakruim Yekol Hakruim. Actually, you guys can come back. Asher Alu Ayom Likvar Makom Likvar Torah Likvar Shabbat. Hakadosh Baruch Hu Yishmor Otam Yekol Mishpechotam. Yishlach Bracha V'Hatzacha B'Chol Maaseh Yedehem In Kol Yisrael Achehem V'Nomar. Amen. We also offer up a Mishaberach for all those in our community who are ill. If you have a name you'd like to add, please rise and you'll share it with us when I pause. Mishaberach Avotenu Abraham Yitzchak Yaakov. Sar Rivka Rachel V'Leah. Hu Yivarech V'Yirapeh Acholim. V'et kol acholim b'gila kedosha. Hakadosh Baruch Hu yimalei rachamim aleihem lahachazikam l'rapotam v'yishlach lahem hera refuah shlema min hasheman refuah nefesh refuah guf b'tok sha'ar cholei Yisrael Shabbat hi milizok refuah krova lavo hashta b'gala v'zman kariv and omar amen. We ask everybody to please rise. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. Yitkadav Shemei Rabbah, Yamad Yivrak Yirutim Yamlich Malchuteh, V'chayekonu v'yomechon u'chayekon b'Yisrael Magala u'v'zman kariv yimru Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'parit romam yitnaser yitadar yitalev yitalal shemir kodesha brichu ve'ela min kavir chata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata dami yoma v'yimeru Kamora Bechura Bat Mitzvah Sarah Miriam Bat Lady Zelig Basima Freda Maftir. You may be seated. The Maftir can be found on page 92, verse 24.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Malach Me'olam Voed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Le'olam Vaed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bahar Banu Mikol Ha'amim V'natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen.
Ve'Avraham Ben Tishim Vatesha Shanach Vehimalo Basar Urlato Vishmael Beno Ben Shalosh Esrei Shanach Vehimalo Et Basar Urlato Be'etzem Hayom Hazeh Nimol Avraham Vishmael Beno V'hol anshei beito yalid bayid u'mikna kesef me'et ben nahar nimolu ito. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah temet v'hayei olam nata betochenu Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Mazel tov. At this point, your dad and grandpa are going to speak and share a few words with you.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you everyone for joining us today to celebrate Aurelia. We know there are family and friends who couldn't be here in person today, either because of the pandemic or the distance involved in traveling to Houston, and many of those folks are watching today online. To those of you out there in the cyberscape, we appreciate you taking the time to join us and watch virtually. So let's talk about Aurelia. I'm sure this very idea horrifies Aurelia, and indeed would horrify any 12-year-old girl. And all the 12-year-old girls in the front row can attest to that. Tweens, as I am told this special species is called, they are characterized by two salient features. First, they are uniformly embarrassed by their parents. And two, they recoil at the very thought of having the spotlight put on them. Here, today, I'm checking both of those boxes. Still, I feel I have to do so because we're here to celebrate Aurelia, and I think there is much to celebrate. Let me start today by pointing out how grown up Aurelia is. Physically, I think this is self-evident. She's this beautiful, vivacious young lady who you would be hard-pressed to recognize as the person who evolved from the baby with enormous cheeks that Simone and I brought home from the hospital in Michigan in 2009. She is healthy, she is fit, and she has hair that I think many people in the shul would die for. You know, it's all about the hair. Aurelia's maturity, however, goes well beyond the physical. As the oldest child in our household, Aurelia imparts wisdom to her younger brother Felix and her younger sister Valeria, both of whom look up to her and attempt to follow in her footsteps. At school, Aurelia works very hard. She does well in her classes, and she is well respected by her teachers. Outside the classroom, she is very passionate about swimming, so much so that I sometimes think she would rather be a fish and spend all her time in water. She's immensely talented at the cello, though admittedly she really does not like to practice. She is fiercely loyal to her friends, many of whom are here today. Aurelia's sense of dedication and studiousness has manifested itself in the event really that brings us here today, Aurelia becoming a bat mitzvah. This is no easy task for any 12-year-old girl, let alone one whose parents have limited abilities to assist her with her work and her preparation. Aurelia plunged into her studies here at Brit Shalom with eagerness, and Simone and I were amazed at how well and how quickly she seemed to grasp Hebrew and the lessons taught to her. That is certainly a testament to her great teachers here at Brit Shalom, but it is also a testament to Aurelia's work ethic and her intellectual curiosity. By being here today, Aurelia is also carrying on a family tradition and a cultural tradition. Aurelia may not admit this to you, but I think this is something that really pleases her immensely, having this connection to her grandparents, her great-grandparents, and so on. I know this because during the pandemic, I did a good deal of genealogy, and Aurelia was intrigued by the family tree I was putting together, so much so that she often asked me for assignments to research particular branches of the tree where I had hit a dead end. And Aurelia made some amazing discoveries that I thought were lost to the vestiges of time and history. But more important, she showed me how much she valued her family. So Aurelia, we really value how becoming a bat mitzvah today, you're carrying on the traditions of our ancestors, and you are a living link from us to them. Anyway, with that, I am going to close. I have embarrassed Aurelia enough for one day. Tomorrow, though, is another day with fresh possibilities, so tune in tomorrow. Simone and I thank you again for joining us here today to celebrate Aurelia, and we want Aurelia to know how proud we are of her, and we love her very much. Thank you.
Grandpa? Well, dear Aurelia, today is your bat mitzvah, a very special milestone in your life and the life of your family. Reflecting upon the last 12 years, from your birth to this momentous occasion, I came to the realization that both your birth and now your bat mitzvah in many ways represent renewal and continuity. My mother, your great grandmother, passed away just 2 months before you were born. A very sad moment in our life was suddenly replaced with the joy or the happiness of you entering our world, thus providing renewal and continuity. Your great-grandmother was a survivor of Auschwitz and the Holocaust, as was your great-grandmother. They survived, but lost most of their family members, rebuilding their lives, having their daily lives with the burden of the losses and they experienced. They did not have the joy of seeing your birth and development into an accomplished young lady that you have become, and your father has well described. But now I know that they would have been very proud of you. Back in 1849, your great-great-great-great-grandfather, Israel Krohn, was the first Jew allowed to settle in the old mining town of Baia Mare in Transylvania with gold aurum, for those who learn Latin, yeah? Aurelia, aurum, Latin, going back to the Roman times. This came about with the enactment of more benevolent laws toward the Jews initiated by Franz Joseph I, Emperor of Austria and King of Hungary. Shortly after settling in town, Israel Krohn became one of the founders of the first Jewish community, burial society, and synagogue. Fast forward on 72 years. Yes, that brings us to today,
and 6,000 miles to Houston. And Israel Crone's great-granddaughter Aurelia celebrates her bar mitzvah. This ceremony marks your transition from childhood into adulthood. According to Jewish law, you become responsible for your own actions. You should remember that in your life you are responsible not just for yourself and your future family, but also your brother and sister. Your family and your siblings should always be the important people in your life. Nana and I are very proud of you. We are proud of all your achievements, but today we are most proud of the fact that despite of many obstacles, one of them being time limitations due to all your activities, you have persevered and completed your studies and preparations for your bat mitzvah. Never forget your Jewish roots and traditions. We all need a tribe to belong to and teachings to guide us. Mazel tov, Aurelia.
So Aurelia, beautiful words from both your dad and your grandpa, inspiring. I want to offer you a mishaberach at this moment as well. You, much like the characters in our Torah reading today, Avram and Sarai, who show complete dedication. That's really what I've seen from you as well in our lessons. Not once did you come in unprepared, not once did you show up with a sense of I don't know what I'm doing. And it really was inspiring for me to watch you as you went through this process to stand here ultimately today. The one comment I want to make to Dad is I pray it's not all about the hair. Not for her, for me. Mishaberach avotenu Avraham, Yitzchak, v'Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, v'Leah. Hu yivarech et Sarah Miriam, but Levi, Zelig, v'Sima, Freda. May God, who blessed our ancestors Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless Aurelia, who has been called to the Torah upon reaching the age of mitzvot, with reverence for God, with reverence for the Torah and Shabbat. May the Holy One protect and sustain her, helping her to be wholehearted in her faith, to study Torah and fulfill mitzvot, to walk in God's ways. May her parents be able to rear her to maturity, guiding her to a love of Torah, to the chuppah, and to a life of ma'asim tovim, a life of good deeds. May she find favor before God and before the community, and together we say, Amen. We are now going to turn in our service to the Haftarah. The binder? The text of the Haftarah can be found on page 95. Aurelia will chant the blessings, followed by the text itself. One other note, we've handed out some candy when Aurelia is finished. There's a tradition of wishing her sweetness, and so we've handed out some candy. And the goal is not to throw at, but to toss gently with love and with a sense of sweetness when she completes her text. And I will give you the signal when that moment arises. And Aurelia, you're on. Blessings.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bahar b'nviim tovim v'rata v'divrehem hane'emarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai haboher b'torah Moshe Avdo, Yisrael Amo, Uvinvieh Ha'emet V'Tzedek.
Amen.
Lama Tomar Yaakov, Utaber Yisrael, Nistara Darki Me Adonai, Ume Elochai Mishpati Ya'avor, Halo Yadata, Imlo Shamata, Elohei Olam Adonai, Borei Ketzot Haaretz, Lo Yi'af Velo Yiga'a, Ein Heker Litvunato, Notain Layef Koa ולינונים יוצמה ירבה, ויפו נערים, ויגעו ובהורים, כשוי כשלו. וכויי אדוני, יחליפו הוח, יעלו עבר כנעשרים, ירוצו ולא ייגעו, ילכו ולא יעפו, החרישו אליים, ולמים יחליפו הוח, ייגשו, אז ידברו, יחטא למשפט נקרבה. מהר ממזרח, צדק יקראו לרגלו, ייתן לפניו גויים, ומלאים ירד, ייתן כפר הרבו, כקש נידש קשתו, ירדפם יעבור שלום, אורח ברגליו לא יבוא. מפעל ועשה, קורא הדורות מראש, אני אדוני ראשון, ואת ההדונים אני הוא. ראויים ויראו, כתות הארץ יהרדו, קרבו ויתיון. איש את רעהו יעזורו, ולהיב יאמר חזק, ויחזק הרש את שורף. מחליק פטיש את הולם פעם, אומר לדבק תוהו, וחזקהו ומסמרים לא ימות. ואתה ישראל עבדי, יעקב אשר בהרתיך, זרע אברהם אוהבי, אשר החזקתיך מקצות הארץ. ומאצילך קראתיך, ואומר לך עבדי אתה, והרתיך ולא מאסתיך, אל תריח כי אם העני, אל שיתך כי אני אלוהיך, אימצתיך, אף עזרתיך, אף תמכתיך במנשקי, הן יבושו ויקלמו, כל הנערים בך, יהיו חיים, ויעבדו אנשי אויביך, תבקשם ולא תמתם, אנשי מצותיך, יהיו חיים, וכאפס אנשי מלחמתך, כי אני אדוני אלוהיך מחזיק ימינך, אומר לך, אל תירא אני עזרתיך, אל תראי תולה יעקב, מטה ישראל, אני עזרתי, נאום אדוני, וגולה קדוש ישראל, הנה שמתיך, למורג הרות הדש, בעל פיפיות, תדוש הרים ותדוק, וגבעות כמות תשים, תזרם ורוח תסעם, ושרה תרביץ אותם. ואתה תגיל באדוני, בקדוש ישראל תתהלל. ברוך אתה אדוני, אלוהינו מלך העולם, צור כל העולמים, צדיק בכל הדורות, האל הנאמן, האומר ועושה, המדבר ומקיים, שכל דבריו אמת וצדק. נאמן אתה הוא, אדוני אלוהינו, ונאמנים דבריך, ודבר אחד מדבריך, אחור לא ישוב ריקם, כי אל מלך נאמן ורחמן אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני,
ברוך שמו,
האל הנאמן בכל דבריו.
אמן.
רחם על ציון, כי היא בית חיינו, ולעלובת נפש תושיע במהרה בימינו. ברוך אתה אדוני,
ברוך שמו,
משמח ציון בבניך.
אמן.
שמחנו אדוני אלוהינו, באליהו הנביא עבדך, ובמהות בית דוד משיחך, במהרה יבוא ויגל ליבנו, על כיסאו לא ישב זר ולא ינהלו עוד אחרים את kevedo, ki v'shem kodesh nishbata lo, shelo yichbein ole olam va'ed. Baruch ata Adonai,
Baruch Shemo.
Magen David.
Amen.
Al HaTorah, ve'al ha'avodah, ve'al ha'nevi'im, ve'al yom ha'shabbat hazeh, shenatata lanu Adonai Eloheinu, likadusha v'limnuha, lechavod ultifaret. Al hakol Adonai Eloheinu, anachnu modim lach, umevarhim otach, Yitbarashim habefi kol tamid le'olam va'ed. Baruch ata Adonai,
Baruch Shemo.
Mekadesh HaShabbat.
Candy, bring it. All right. A life of sweetness. We invite all our youth to come up and help us clean up. Come on up, take some candy with you. Don't you wish they were that eager to clean up at home? It works that way too, that's right. We are going to return the Sefer Torah to the Aron as we turn to page 153 and rise. Hallelujah, Shem Adonai, ki nizkav shemo livado, odo al eretz v'shamayim, vayarem keren li'amo, tila lechol chasidav, livnei Yisrael am kerobo. Hallelujah, hallelujah, mizmor leDavid, havul Adonai b'nei Elim, havul Adonai kavod, kirot shemo, ishtakavu Adonai bi'arat kodesh, kol Adonai alamayim el hakavod yarim, Adonai amayim rabim, kol Adonai ma'koach, kol Adonai be'ador, kol Adonai dover arazim, vayishaber Adonai et arzei havanon, vayarkidem kimo egel, Lebanon v'Sirion kimo ben reimim, kol Adonai chotzev lavotesh, kol Adonai yakir midbar, yakir Adonai midbar kadesh, kol Adonai yekol el hayalon, vayekesov yaror v'heikalo kulo merkavod, Adonai Yashav Yeshev Adonai melech li'olam, Adonai Oziam Yikim, Adonai Yivarech Rachol Shalom, Brucho Yomar.
Et hayim hi lama hazikim ba betom hechameoshar dirahecha garhenon v'chol v'divotecha shalom. Hashiv
We remain standing and turn to page 155. Yitkada v'yitkada shmei Rabbah B'yama divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayedecha b'Yisrael b'gala b'gala u'v'zman kariv yimru Yehishmei Rabba Mivarach Li'alam Olam Yomaya Yitbarak V'yishtabak V'yipar V'yitromam V'yitnaseh V'yitadar V'yitaleh V'yitala Shemei L'Kudusha B'richu Li'ela Mincha Birkata V'shirata Tushbekata v'nechemata Damiran b'yama v'imro. Musaf Amidat begins page 156b. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avoteinu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak v'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel v'Elohei Leah Hawel Agadol Agibor v'Yanora El Elyon Gomel Chazadim Tovim v'Konei Hakol v'Zocher Chasdei Avod u'Mevi Goel Livnei V'nehem Man Shemo B'Yava Melech Ozer Ufoked U'Moshia U'Magin Baruch Atah Adonai Magin Avraham Ufoked Sarah Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai Mechayim Metim Atarav Lehoshia Mashiv Haruach U'Morid Hashem Mechakel Chayim Bechesed Mechayim Metim Berachamim Rabim Somech Noflim V'Rofei Cholim U'Matir Asurim U'Mekayim Emunato Lishenei Afar Miyechamocha Ba'al Gevurot Omido Melech Melech Meimid U'Mechayeh U'Matmiach Yeshua V'ne'emanata L'chayot Metim Baruch Atah Adonai Michayeh Ametim. Naritzeka v'nagdishecha kisotziach sarvei kodesh hamakdishim shimecha b'kodesh kakatuv al yad neviecha v'kara el Zeviamar Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh Adonai Tzvaot Melech Haaretz Kivodo Kivodo Male Male Olamayim Mikom Kivodo Kivodo Male Male Olamayim Mikom Kivodo Kivodo Male Olam Mishartav Shoalim Shoalim Zelazeh Ayim Mikom Kivodo Mishartav Shoalim Shoalim Zelazeh Ayim Mikom Kivodo Liumatam Baruch Yomeiro Baruch Kivod Adonai Mimikomo ממקומו ייתן ברחמים ויחונם עמם יקדים שמו ערב הבוקר בכל יום תמיד פעמיים ביעבר שמע אומרים שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד. הוא אלוהינו אבינו הוא מלכנו מושיענו והוא ישמיענו ברחמיו שנית 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 לעיני כל חי להיות לכם לאלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם ודברי קודשך כתוב לאמור ימלוך אדוני לעולם אלוהי ציון לדור ודור הללויה לדור ודור לדור ודור לדור ודור נגיד עוד לך לדור ודור לדור ודור לדור ודור נגיד God לך ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש קדושתך נקדיש ושיחך אלוהינו מבינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד לדור ודור לדור ודור לדור ודור נגיד God לך לדור ודור לדור ודור לדור ודור נגיד God לך כי המלך גדול גדול וקדוש גדול וקדוש אתה כי המלך גדול גדול וקדוש גדול וקדוש אתה ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. ויום השבת שניכם עשים בלישן. Ose shalom bimromav, uyase shalom aleinu, v'yako Yisrael, v'imru amen. Yase shalom, shalom aleinu, v'yako Yisrael. Yase shalom, shalom aleinu v'yako Yisrael. Yase shalom, shalom aleinu v'yako Yisrael. Yase shalom, shalom aleinu v'yako Yisrael. V'yimeru, amen. 181. Yitkara v'yikara shemei rabba, me'miyam adivra kirute v'yamlik ma'akute b'chayechon v'yimechon v'chayecho beit Yisrael, ba'gala v'zman karev v'yimeru. Yehi shmei rabba mivarak li'alam olam me'amaya. Yitbarak v'yishtabak v'yitpar v'yitrumah v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitalev v'yitalav shmir kurusha b'rikol ela minko birchata v'shirata tishbechata v'nakamata damiran v'yalama v'yimeru amen. Titkabal tzilot honu v'aud hon decho Yisroel kodam avu hon v'shmaya v'yimeru. Yehi shlam rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'yal kol Yisroel v'yimeru. Ose shalom bimromav, uyase shalom aleinu v'yako Yisroel v'yimeru. You may be seated. Shabbat shalom, mazel tov. Mr. President, welcome back. We hope you enjoyed the bar mitzvah last week away at CYJ, and it's good to have you back as well. Genesis 13, the earlier part of our Torah reading from this morning, describes a family in crisis and in danger of falling apart. God's bountiful blessings of wealth paradoxically lead Avram and Lot, the patriarch and his nephew, into deep conflict. Having returned to Canaan together, the two now part ways. Avram remains in the land of Canaan, while Lot journeys to Sodom. The separation, however, between them is not just geographical, it's also one of character. Avram and Lot become paradigms for two very differing ways of perceiving and responding to abundance and wealth. Whereas Avram is portrayed as a man of faith and trust, able to see clearly even in the face of increased prosperity, Lot is depicted as just the very opposite, a man blinded by materialism and an unquenchable hunger for yet more. A careful reading of the text provides a remarkable window into the Torah's approach to receiving and responding to God's blessings. After traveling with family and a famine, as a result of a famine and a brief sojourn in Egypt, Avram travels back to Canaan. Subtly, our text conveys a message. It suggests that Avram and his nephew had been on close terms in the past, but by the time they return to Egypt this time, something's happened. Something has come between them. The text says, from Egypt, Avram went up into the Negev with his wife and all he possessed, together with Lot. Subtly, the text is telling us that by placing Lot last in this list, after Avram's possessions, the text suggests and it hints at a degree of estrangement. So what now stands between Avram and Lot? Careful reading of the verse tells us. It says wealth and poverty. The verse literally places the issues between them in between their names. And this breach is then further explained in the next chapter, where it says, when Lot is taken into captivity, we learn that the kings of Sodom and Amorah also took Lot and his possessions, the son of Avram's brother. And that's an unusual formulation and extremely suggestive. Lot's possessions, it would seem, by being placed where they are what stands in the way of the relationship with his uncle. The text further tells us that so plentiful is Avram's and Lot's wealth that the land could not support them staying together, for their possessions were too great. And as a result, Avraham's herdsmen and those of Lot begin to quarrel. Wishing to avoid conflict, Avram speaks out to Lot and says, "Let there be no strife between you and me, between your herdsmen and mine, for we are kinsmen." Now, genial as these words sound, Avram's words may convey a subtle critique of Lot. The usual Hebrew word for strife in such situations would be the word riv, quarrel. But instead, Avram speaks of merivah. Nachum Sarna notes that it cannot be fortuitous that in all other uses of this word merivah in biblical Hebrew, it refers exclusively to the controversies and the grumblings of the people against their leader and against God over the lack of water during their trek through the desert. Avram's choice of words thus contain an underlying judgment of base ingratitude on the part of Lot. Nevertheless, his offer is quite generous. He says, "Is not the whole land out there before us? Kindly part with me. If you go north, I will go south. If you go south, I will go north." Avram's generosity is incredibly important and instructive for us. His trust in God's promise is what makes him gracious and generous. Avram believes. He believes what God told him. The land one day will belong to him and his descendants, but he doesn't insist that that promise has to be fulfilled immediately. In the interest of peace, in the short term, Avram is willing to temporarily let go part of the land promised him to God. And immediately after Avram and Lot part ways, God responds by reiterating the promise of the land and intensifying that very promise. Avram is to receive the entire land. And now it is he himself, not just his descendants, who will inherit that land. In this way, the text is giving us a sense and a hint of the divine approval of Avram's actions towards Lot. So let's return to this nature of this gap between Avram's character and that of Lot. When Avram returns from Egypt newly enriched, the Torah tells us that he proceeded by stages from the Negev as far as Beit El to the place where his tent had been formerly, between Beit El and Ai, the site of the altar he had built there at first. And there Avram invoked the Lord by name. What's going on here? By indicating that Avram has returned to what is essentially his routine, his familiar routine, his home, the same devotion to God. The text is suggesting that Avram has returned unchanged by his newfound wealth. He is the same person now as he was before he became prosperous. Moreover, when Avram offers Lot whichever part of the land he wants, Lot chooses the land, the area near Sodom. It's a location beyond the borders of the promised land. Avram amasses wealth, and he remains pious and humble, ever aware that he has received a gift. Lot amasses wealth and hungrily seeks out more, so much so that he willingly leaves the promised land in search of a place where he can materially find more. The Torah itself, additionally, subtly juxtaposes Avram's character with Lot. Despite being the elder, Avram self-effacingly defers to Lot, allowing him to choose the land in which he wishes to settle. Lot, however, does not respond in kind. Basic courtesy would seem to demand that Lot defer to his uncle, but perhaps predictably, he agrees to make the selection himself, choosing the Jordan Valley and leaving a dry and rocky hill country to his uncle. He opted for the best for himself without hesitation and without apology. Lot simply sees what he wants and he journeys to it. Finally, the Torah deftly uses geography to dramatize the contrast between these two. As the chapter draws to an end, Avram is up on the heights and Lot down in the sunken plain. In the words of Monty Python, Lot chose poorly. In my life, I've been blessed with an incredible relationship with a brother. At an earlier stage, we agreed that despite what would inevitably be conflict, there going to arise in any relationship, we would never allow finances to come between us, and they never have. At different stages, each of us has assisted the other unquestioningly. We promised each other that issues of inheritance would result in no conflict, and we have fulfilled that promise. On a similar note, there's a midrash, a popular midrash, associated with Tisha B'Av, reflecting the selection of Jerusalem as the site of the temple. Two brothers had each inherited half of their father's farm. One of the brothers was married and had a large family. The other brother was single, and they lived on opposite sides of a hill. One night, during the harvest time, the single brother tossed around in bed. He says, "How can I rest comfortably and take a full half of the yield when my brother has so many more mouths to feed?" So he arose, he gathered bushels of produce, and he quietly climbed the hill to bring them over to his brother's barn. Meanwhile, his brother across the hill could also not sleep. His words, "How can I enjoy my full share of the produce and not be concerned with my brother? He's alone in the world, without a wife or children. Who will support him in his old age?" So he arose in the night and quietly brought over bushels of produce to his brother's barn. Next morning dawns, each brother goes and looks, and they're surprised to find that what he had given away has somehow been replenished. They continued these nocturnal treks for many nights. Each morning, they were astounded to find that the bushels had been removed, that the bushels that they had removed had been replenished. And then one night, it happened. The brothers met at the top of the hill during their evening adventure, and there, fully understanding what had happened, they embraced one another. The Midrash says that God looked down on this expression of brotherhood and said, on this spot of mutual love, I wish to dwell. Here, my holy temple will be built. May it be God's will that we learn from Avram's family torn asunder and the contrasting midrash of the two brothers. May we be blessed, whether in poverty or prosperity, with family, with friends, and with community whose deep care for one another is evidenced by our choices. Shabbat Shalom. Aurelia, we welcome you back. Come on up. We turn back to our Sidurim, page 182, in Kelohenu. I'm sorry, you're right.
In Kelohenu,
In Kadonenu, in Kemalkenu, in Kemoshienu, Mi Kelohenu, Mi Kadonenu, Mi Moshienu, Nodel Eloheinu, Nodel Adonenu, Nodel Imakenu, Nodel Moshienu, Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Makenu, Baruch Moshienu, Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Makenu, Atahu Moshienu, Atahu Shetiru, Avotenu, Lefaneha Ketoret Hasamim. We rise, Aleinu 183.
Aleinu l'shabea l'adon hakol l'tekidu l'yotzer breshit shelo asaru ki goyei ha'aratzot velo samanu k'mitpachot ha'adama shelo sam chelkeinu kahem v'gor aleinu k'chol hamonam v'anachnu koreim umishtachavim umodim lifnei melech malchei amlachim hakadosh baruch hu shehu notesh shamayim v'yosed haaretz umosha b'karo b'shamayim imal ushchinatu zo b'govei meromim hu Eloheinu enod emakenu v'zulato kakatu b'torato v'yadata yom b'shivota elivavecha ki Adonai hu Elohim b'shamayim yamah v'alaret mitachat enod. כי לך תקרא כל ברכתי שבכל לשון לפניך אדוני אלוהינו יקראו ויפול ולבוד שמך יתן וכתוב בתורתך אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד ושמו אחד. May be seated. On this Shabbat, our hearts go out to the family of Betsy Rose Ellerin Matthews, and we're observing the following yortzites: Ira Brown, Leon Brown, Harry Cohn, Joseph Engelhardt, Sherry Fisher Epstein, Lawrence Feldman, Theodore Friedman, Norman Garvin, Susanna Goldberg, Morris Holland, Max Kaufman, Barbara Kellner, Nathaniel Leff, Louis Levine, Lucy Liebgold, Thomas Samuels, Ernst Schaumburg, and Siggy Standlander. Those in a period of mourning, those observing a yortzeit, we invite you to rise. The words of Mourner's Kaddish can be found on page 184. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shmei Rabbah, v'yalma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'vizman kariv yimru amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mivorach v'yolam l'almei maya, v'yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shmei l'kudusha brichu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata,
Tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran bi'alma v'yimru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya. V'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav. Hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. You may be seated. Jonah, Mr. President.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. My name is Jonah Paransky. I'm the president of Congregation Bris Shalom, and it's fantastic to be here with all of you today, both in person and online, to celebrate Shabbat with us. A yasher koach to all of our daveners, Torah readers, and gabayim in our Gazumbai today. Thank you so much for helping us make the service so special today. Mazel tov, Aurelia. A mazel tov to your parents, Simona and Ken, and the entire family. I do have some gifts to present to you, so come on up. Oh, they're here. Awesome. So Aurelia, I have this Kiddush cup from the CBS Men's Club and CBS Women. Mazel tov. I have this Tanakh from the congregation. And lastly, a year-long membership to the ERJCC. Mazel tov. Yeah. Right. Upcoming events, just a small number of announcements. First of all, we have our Shabbat study group starting up on Saturday, October 16th at 1 p.m. on Zoom. We have contemporary Jewish artists and a visual midrash with 3 artists joining to discuss their work. The more information is in our weekly Boker Tov. So great opportunity to engage in art and visual midrash together on Saturday, October 16th. Our morning minyan continues daily at 9 a.m., Sunday through Friday, and that's available online as well through Zoom. We have an adult education class with Cantor Levine tomorrow, in person and in Zoom, and Thursdays, Zoom only. More information is in our Boker Tov, which is our twice weekly update to the congregation. And lastly, tomorrow morning, we have a men's club breakfast here in person at 10 a.m. in the social hall. And with that, Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Just one clarification, because there was some confusion. The class that I'm teaching Sunday, I'm teaching again the same session on Thursday. So it's not too distinct. I'm just repeating the session so that people can attend at either time. Sunday at 10, Thursday at noon. Page 187, Adon Olam.
Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'terem Kol, Yitzir Nivra, Lein Nesar, Behefzer Kol, Azai Melech Shemo Nikra Adon Olam, V'Hare Kiklot HaKol, Levado Yimloch Nora Adon Olam, V'Hu Havoya, V'Hu Helveh, V'Hu Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'terem Kol, Yitzir Nivra, Li'et Nasa, Behefzer Kol, Azai Melech Shemo Nikra Adon Olam, V'Harad Vein Sheni, Laham Shilo Lehabira Adon Olam, Beli Reshit, Beli Tachlit, V'lo Haos V'Rab Yisrael Adon Olam, Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'terem Kol, Yitzir Nivra, Li'et Nasa, Behefzer Kol, Azai Melech Shemo Nikra Adon Olam, V'Hu Eli, V'Hai Koali, V'Tor Havli Beit Zara Adon Olam, V'Hu Eisi Umanosli, Menakosi B'Yom Ekra Adon Olam, Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'terem Kol, Yitzir Nivra, Li'et Nasa, Behefzer Kol, Azai Melech Shemo Nikra Adon Olam, B'Ya'ado Afkid Ruchi, Beit Disham Be'al melach
Asher malach
b'terem kol
b'terem kol
yitzir
yitzir
nivra
nivra
li'et nasa
li'et nasa
b'hefsekol azar melech shemo nikra Adon olam.
Please rise. Yep, take the Kiddush cup. There you go. Right hand and Vishamru.
V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat le'dorotam berit olam. V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat le'dorotam berit olam. Beni uven b'nei Yisrael oti le'olam, oti le'olam, oti le'olam. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asor et ha-Shabbat le'dorotam berit olam. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et ha-shamayim ve'et ha'aretz. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asor et ha-Shabbat le'dorotam berit olam. Ubayom hashvi Shabbat vayinachash, Shabbat vayinachash, Shabbat vayinachash. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat le'dorotam berit olam. Al ken berach Adonai et yom ha-Shabbat vayekadeshehu. Savri. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu el natilat yadayim.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lehem min haaretz.
Amen. If you go down and join your family, we're going to ask everyone to find someone in their immediate vicinity to whom they can extend blessings. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yichunecha, Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. Shabbat shalom.